Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgier kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really means the world to us that you help us out. And if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as the link to our good friends at Critical Failures, which is a live stream game that we actually do, that I'm a part of, that I play in. It's Wednesday, 9:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Central. Check us out. There's a bunch of videos of us up already. If you wanted to see kind of my play style and some of the great other play styles of some of the incredible players I'm playing with, and really kind of, especially if you're new to D&D and haven't actually had an opportunity to play, it's a great way to kind of learn and kind of see what's going on. So check it out. And with all that out of the way, we're going to jump into this week's video, and we're going to talk about the Thief Rogue. The Thief Rogue comes to us from the Player's Handbook, and I single-handedly blame this subclass particularly for making the Arcane Trickster the more popular class for the Rogue. And I say that because this Thief Rogue is a build more so for older editions of Dungeons and Dragons, where some of these things made a bigger impact than they do currently. And I'll go through that as I go through some of the abilities. The interesting concept of when the Rogue came out was how most of your damage, and still true to this day, comes from sneak attack. So to balance that out, they didn't really give you a lot of increasing damaging abilities throughout your actual gameplay with the other classes, subclasses. The Assassin Rogue gets a couple of things that you can hit that do a lot of damage, but ultimately they're extremely high level and they're difficulty to really capitalize on. The first round of combat for an Assassin Rogue is amazing, but after that it kind of falls back into the base format that all rogues kind of sit at. But the Arcane Trickster and its ties to magic get better as more spells are released and created. And that's something that you know inherently when you're making this class, because you've seen spells as they've gone through from earlier editions to the later books that were released, that they increase in the amount of spells being released and just a variety of spells from edition to edition. So that opens a doorway for a perpetual way to keep up with whatever circumstances are arriving and growing in power as better spells and more refined spells come out in later editions. So those out of themselves are strong abilities, but because the Thief is built around a very thinly basic idea, it propels those other two subclasses to the front. And then when you look at Assassin next to Arcane Trickster directly, the Arcane Trickster is leaps and bounds ahead of the Assassin. And there's not enough an offset between the three of them to really bring that kind of to where it's supposed to be, where it's more of a balanced play field where kind of you feel good picking either one. And that's something that propelled Arcane Trickster into being the strongest right out the gate subclass. That might be a little bit more opinion based, so if you don't agree with me, that's cool, I get it. Again, this is just my opinion. But the Thief is built around the classic Thief, where you're not so much a murderer as you are someone like a treasure hunter. When you select this subclass at 3rd level, you gain fast hands. You can use the bonus action granted by your cunning action to make a dexterity sleight of hand check. Use your Thief's tool to disarm a trap or open a lock, or take the use an object action. So this most of the time gets kind of slept on or really dismissed as not being a great opportunity. Using an object is a little bit more intricate, because you can use things like monocles and caltrops and things like that, especially early on when they're really, really effective. Keep in mind, magic items are still objects. Some DMs might play against that. There might even be an official rule against that. I'm unaware of it. If you have a magic item that does something, I can't see a reason why this wouldn't work. I'm pretty sure, and at least the way I've always played, is that you can use a magic item as an object to do whatever thing it does. So you can use that as a bonus action, which, again, it could be just happen to be in some of the games I've played in that we've done that. But if you do play that way, it does create a great opportunity to do something like use a scroll or use something that has a specialized effect and then make an attack. Which is great because you can use it defensively, or you can use it as a disable or something to cause confusion and really give yourself a great way to capitalize on the opportunistic nature of your character. And I think that was kind of designed that way. Like maybe throw, smoke or something, or alchemist fire or whatever it is, or something to cause confusion or set something ablaze as a distraction. But it's designed for a more creative, tactical kind of a player. If you're not that kind of a player, then this ability is worthless to you. Very rarely are you in a situation where you need to disarm a trap mid-combat, or you need to use specifically a bonus action to do that. It's just not kind of in the realm of anything outside of combat, because you can always just, if you're not in combat, you're really adventuring, so you could take that 6 seconds to just pop open a lock and not need to worry about doing that. Again, it's just, you have to be capable of thinking outside the box and being very knowledgeable of regular mundane items as well, to really get the most out of this. So it makes you kind of very eclectic in that kind of ability, but you really lose out if you're not that kind of a character, which again is part of the reason why this is not the most popular subclass out there. Also at 3rd level, you gain 2nd story work. When you choose this archetype at 3rd level, you gain the ability to climb faster than normal. Climbing no longer costs you extra movement. In addition, when you make a running jump, the distance you cover is increased by a number of feet equal to your dexterity modifier. This is, again, an adventuring design kind of ability, which I think is kind of meant to offset fast hands being more combat intuitive. The reason that this doesn't end up being as great as you might think is climbing is such a rare mechanic you have to deal with that you'll ever really need to go faster than your normal move speed. If you climb at 15 feet per 6 seconds for your normal movement, climbing 30 feet per 6 seconds isn't going to give you anything super over the top beneficial. Very rare is a circumstance where it would just be you climbing, and you have to make it within a certain time period. In my mind, this is kind of built for the centaur, because I think it's just funny to see, just a galloping horse human just kind of running up a mountainside or the side of a building. But this is really built for non-combat, more adventuring circumstances. If you were ever to spy on someone, this could come in handy from the outside, watching and seeing what's going on in a building or something. Maybe in a heavy political intrigue, heavy RP kind of campaign, would you get real mileage out of this? But most of the time you really won't. Supreme Sneak. At 9th level, you have advantage on a dexterity stealth check if you move no more than half your speed on the same turn. Now, this ability is better in my mind after having played Baldur's Gate 3 because of what you can do with stealth in combat. Or at least the way that game has kind of portrayed it. And it kind of opened my eyes to it working like that in real D&D. So that being said, this ability does get really, really great. Because you move 15 feet and you have advantage on basically just being difficult, being really hard for someone to see you. So they get lost to give yourself that unseen attacker advantage. This works out really, really well. And it's better because if you make sure you maintain a distance and you use a bow and arrow, which is definitely one of the rogue subclasses where I suggest you do, this does put you in that point of consistently high damage output because of advantage, because you're an unseen attacker, because you managed to have advantage on your stealth check, which is going to be through the roof anyway, but it definitely offsets any kind of bad roll that you would make. Use magic device. By 13th level, you've learned enough about the workings of magic that you can improvise the use of items even when they are not intended for you. You ignore all class, race, and level requirements on the use of magic items. This is heavily dependent on what kind of DM you have, depending on what magic items he releases into the party and what kind of things that they do. I'm a big fan of DMs when they do release magical items for them having a purpose. You have a character that's underperforming in some sort of field of combat, give them a magical weapon. Bring them up to par so that way they're on the same level. You have a sequence of adventuring circumstances where one character tends to fail. Give them a magic item to balance that out so they have a better chance of succeeding. Make it a reward for doing this at X amount of times or whatever it is, or whatever kind of circumstance. I like that because it makes sense in the avenue of what's going on in the game. Because you're trying to achieve these things, you should get items that help you achieve them. It just makes sense. I'm not really of the mindset that everyone should just get like a bunch of magic items. Just whatever happens. I think if you take some time to weigh out who's there in your party and who needs what, or who's struggling, or maybe someone feels like their character is underperforming some way, and you happen to know the magic items really, really well, that you can give them something that might give them that little edge to kind of push them over. But the problem with an ability like this is it makes it too easy for a rogue to be greedy. And inherently, if you're a rogue, you want to be greedy, or you may be a little greedy anyway. We all fall victim to seeing a new magic item pop up and going, oh, I want that. Very few of us see a new magic item and go, oh, that's good for so-and-so. And that's kind of the mentality you really want, because these are your friends. You want them to succeed. You're not playing like an MMO where like an item drops and it goes, I need that. And there are a billion people around you waiting to get that same item. It's not like that. So this does alleviate that, and kind of gives that rogue the opportunity for, well, this item is great for everyone, including the rogue. So it kind of puts yourself in a situation where sometimes dominant personalities playing this kind of a character might get more than what's intended. And it's not the DM's job to mitigate items between players. That's players' responsibility to each other. Some people naturally are timid and are not great in social interactions and might really want an item or really feel that item's kind of destined for that character. And then the rogue might show up and be a very dominant person who decides that that item is even better or just as good on him, and push that to get it for themselves. And because of personality attributes, might win that argument very, very easily and then get an item and this other character's left wanting. That's kind of my whole big rant on magical items and characters that can use them, even though not necessarily meant for them. And I think you have to be careful with what you do. It is a great thing in case a character in your party dies, and they are the only one capable of using a magical item that is a necessity to move the story forward. I think this is a great way to pick up slack like that, but I don't think this is really I don't think this really ends up being used in that kind of a manner. Thief's reflexes. When you reach 17th level, you've become adept at laying ambushes and quickly escaping danger. You can take 2 turns during the first round of any combat. When you take the first turn at your normal initiative and your second turn at your initiative -10, and you can't use this feature when you are surprised. This, again, is a super high level ability. It just is. Obviously, because you're 17th level, you're towards the end of the game, no matter what campaign you're playing. This ability is devastating. And I say that, and people will often not feel the impact of how important the first round of combat can be. First round of combat, you're setting up everything. You're setting up your damage control, your field control, your any kind of disables you're going to put out, or your huge damage spells to try and just limit the amount of enemies that can attack you at once. Having 2 turns as a rogue gives you the opportunity to hit one enemy or NPC and definitively give you the opportunity to take them off the board completely. Because your sneak attack damage is so high, you can, if you position yourself correctly, especially if you're able to get advantage on this or any of the other triggering factors to set it up. Maybe you laid a trap or something and you lured people in there, you're hiding, or you were smart enough to stealth up and be hidden throughout the entire exploration of where you are. You can hit sneak attack twice on the same target if it doesn't go down the first time. That is a huge chunk of damage. Obviously, it's a variable because it's based around how well you roll on sneak attack, but you can take not the biggest monster in the boss in the fight down, but you can definitely take someone off the board and still put yourself in a situation where you're great. Shoot that arrow, stealth again, shoot that arrow, stealth again, and you manage to stay hidden, and you still are able to get advantage, and you're still able to hit. So you might be crit fishing at that point as well, because you're attacking with advantage. It can change how a combat is set up mentality wise, because you might drop somebody really, really quickly. Also, it's easier to take off targets that are more of a problem because they're specialized. So if you see like a wizard or something in the back row, you pop them and take them away. That changes the whole effectiveness and the tactics of the remaining people that are fighting you. So you get a little bit of a tactical situation where you can be smart enough to pick high priority targets and really diminish their effect on the combat right at Jump Street, right at the beginning. And that's very, very big. The first round of combat, done right, can eliminate a huge chunk of issues and save you a bunch of resources going further down the line. With all that said and done, we're going to bring this video to the close. I'm really not a big fan of the Thief. There are some cool tricks you can do. Some, like the 17th level ability, I actually think is really good. But again, this is a subclass that I feel really pushed Arcane Trickster all the way up to the front. But with all that said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. Thank you for making it this far in the video. It really helps a lot for the actual videos to grow when you stay all the way to the end. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Again, thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as the link to Critical Failures, where we play every week on Wednesday nights. Check us out, and thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.